Hello, I have a question for you. Do you know what an ephemeris is? An ephemeris gives the trajectory of astronomical objects in the sky over time. In layman's terms, an ephemeris can tell you when and where in the sky, relative to your location, the sun or even the moon, for example, will rise and set. It can also tell you how long the intervals of dawn and dusk are. For example, let me show you this on the web. You can visit this on a website. This is suncalc.org, I believe. But you can clearly see that from where I am, relative to my location, you can see that today, dawn happened at 06:21. Not long after sunrise, the sun actually crested the horizon at 06:58 and change. We can expect a day length of 12 hours and almost 13 minutes. And we know that from this, the sun will crest the horizon again in the west at 1911. Hopefully that didn't bore you. Now, even better than that, I'll show you this app on my phone is even more accurate. It tells me even more of the story. It tells me that today, 22nd of September, is equinox. It even shows me that every day for the next week, we will lose at least 4 minutes and 35 seconds of daylight. I could give you more statistics, but I won't bore you any further. The point is that it is incredibly reliable. So that's an ephemeris. Now, I tend to use it most for photography reasons, so that wherever I am, if I'm here in Edinburgh, if I'm on holiday, I know when to go out and what to expect the light to be like when I get to where I want to be. So let me just ask you, how many things in life are that reliable? So many aspects of our lives are full of uncertainty and disappointment. Knowing that I can rely on an ephemeris to guide my hobby is great. The weather, of course, is another matter entirely, but we won't get into that. Fortunately, as Christians, we have ultimate comfort in the promises of God. God's promises are even more reliable than an ephemeris. The writer of Hebrews tells his readers that the promise of salvation through faith in Jesus Christ is sure. The reader can rely on the promises of God. He makes an appeal to us here at the end of chapter 6. Let's see. Let's read from Hebrews chapter 6, verses 13 to 20. When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And so after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. People swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where our forerunner, Jesus, has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. So, as our world gets increasingly unreliable and unpredictable, Jesus is the anchor that keeps us safe until the end. In fact, one of the main points in the book of Hebrews is that Jesus is the guarantor of God's promise of redemption. God promises our redemption on an oath and swears by himself to make it absolutely certain. Hebrews reminds us that Jesus never changes. This is an encouraging word for us whose entire faith and hope rest on him. Just like Abraham relied on God's promises, so can we. Abraham's faith is why God confirmed the covenant and the promise with him. That's how he inherited it, and that is how we too inherit it. God has never gone back on his promises, so they are reliable and we can trust in them. Just like you can look through the records of an ephemeris chart and see that it's reliable, so too you can look through Scripture and see that God has never gone back on his promises. God is so true to his word that here in Hebrews, he swears by himself and makes an oath from his solid reputation. I love where it says, quote, "We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain where our forerunner Jesus has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest forever." It's an amazing thing that God is so careful to ensure we have an unshakable hope. Not many kings have this kind of passion for their people. It would not be hard to imagine that there would be a king over a kingdom who says, "Get out there and do what I tell you to do. Stop thinking about whether or not you have hope. Do what's right because I say so. Stop dwelling on the future. Do what you're supposed to do and stop wondering how it's going to turn out in the end." Well, God is not like that. He is utterly committed to speaking to our hope, and he does this throughout Scripture. Before Jesus, high priests came and went according to how long they lived, but they were simply pointing towards a perfect and permanent sacrificial offering, the Lamb who was slain on the cross. No matter what circumstances we might be facing today, no matter the challenges that we might be dealing with, no matter how uncertain a hand we are dealt today, it is of great encouragement to know that our salvation is sealed in Jesus through the assurances of a God who doesn't change or break his promises. He is even more reliable than the most reliable Ephemeris. Just as sure as the sun will set today at 11 past 7 o'clock tonight, we can depend on the Lord to keep us safe into the end, firmly held in his loving salvation. It's that same Lord who put the earth on its path that keeps our trajectory the same. It's by his strong hand that we can rely on the data in our ephemeris. In and of itself, an ephemeris is a promise given to us from God. As I said about an ephemeris, there aren't many things so reliable in life. But a bit like our ephemeris, our God, there's nothing more reliable in our life. So trustworthy and true, and so worthy of our worship. How wonderful it is to rest in the promises of God, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion.